At a recent GDC session, Sony made a huge announcement, a monumental announcement, or maybe we've heard of it before, Project Morpheus, their VR headset. It's still in prototype stages, but Sony's still pretty darn proud of it. It looks very much like you might have seen before from the Oculus Rift, except not crowdsourced, with not necessarily money, but also money, but talent from everyone around the pool, more so something that Sony made itself.
It's very sleek.
Yes, it looks much sleeker than the Rift.
Yes, it looks comfortable too. Is that weird? Did anybody else get that indication? It looks more comfortable than
one of the specs that's different between this and the Oculus Rift is that it's much lighter, and that's therefore probably more comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's because the processing box actually sits outside of the unit, whereas on the Oculus Rift, it's built into it.
Yeah, head weight can get pretty unruly after a while. So some developers have already previewed this. There's no public video for us to see, but apparently the Crystal Cove iteration of the Oculus Rift has much better visual fidelity than the prototype of the Morpheus, which is, I guess, good, but it's still just a prototype. We'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, one of the reasons for that is that right now Project Morpheus is using LCD displays that you're looking at, but Oculus Rift has been using OLEDs, so it's a lot
My guess
clearer.
is Sony will probably catch up before retail.
I'm guessing they will. They'll probably figure it out and use their piles of money to develop it further.
As of right now, Project Morpheus also has a little bit more light bleeding in underneath, probably because it's a lighter, smaller, more compact thing. And the viewing angle is noticeably smaller. So unlike the Crystal Cove, you can see the edge of the image on Project Morpheus much more defined.
Yeah. So the problem here is, will this be more of a peripheral device, more of a fad, a gimmick in gaming, or will it be the new future? At the Sony presentation, they were very emphatic in saying that it's not a peripheral, it is a medium.
I think they're really trying to get people on board with the Sony Move controllers, which didn't work nearly as well as they wanted to.
They didn't sell nearly as well as they wanted to either.
Right, probably because they didn't make them essential in any way to any of their big AAA title games.
Yeah.
So now they're creating a world where if you have these Move controllers and you have the VR goggles, like you could really do some crazy stuff that nobody else is doing.
Yeah, but then we're going to have to create games that would need that essential component. Otherwise, it does feel like an unnecessary peripheral.
I mean, it all comes down to games development at the end of the day.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, it's not like Sony doesn't have the ability to create its own games as well, so maybe they will end up the eventual winners of the VR headset war, if I may.
I think this also brings up a conversation that we've had before and the last couple of consoles have inspired, and that is, how do people want to play games? They can innovate the way we play games, but some people aren't about getting up and moving and swinging Wiimotes. They just want to sit and play. And it's cool to have virtual reality goggles in that full 3D sensory environment, but do you really want to strap a thing on your head, which is essentially a really antisocial thing to do? I mean, it is. I mean, when we play games, there's a certain environment that we create for ourselves that we're used to. We sit in front of a TV or in front of a screen, or we sit with friends. And now, if we have a thing strapped to our head and we have like really sensitive, like how is the gaming community want to be perceived, and how do they want to experience games in the future?
I think that's a really interesting point because, as you recall, many people don't like motion gaming and they haven't gleaned onto it like maybe some other different audiences have. It could be that people who didn't like, the gimmick or so-called gimmick of motion gaming won't like this, or it could be that people who want that immersive, completely immersive solo experience would, people who probably don't like social group party gaming would like this. So it's interesting to think about where that might go.
Or we could all sit on the couch together, all with our own headsets, and only interact with each other in virtual space.
If you do that, I will rob you.
Sony is actually also walking a really dangerous line with fully immersive VR technology and motion controls.
Oh, no.
Because it's making us get up and move around, but we can't see what we're about to hit.
My face!
where we are in the room even. People are going to be like tripping over tables and falling into fireplaces and kicking their 2-month-old child just lying on the, like, that's dangerous stuff.
Project Morpheus runs only on PS4, whereas the Rift doesn't have that limitation. Well, you can think of it as less of a limitation and more of an advantage to having this whole thing centered around them. Not sure. We'll see.
I think that brings up an interesting thing in terms of that PCs are in a constant state of evolution and constantly getting more and more processing power, whereas the PS4, great system, but it's kind of the way that it's going to be until the next model.
Well, that's also like the pros and cons of console versus PC gaming.
Right.
The PC game, your PC setup can constantly get better as you improve it yourself, whereas consoles have something built specifically for them. And they have, for those system requirements match what you have already.
Right. That being said, if Sony is putting a lot of money behind making sure that this VR experience works with the games that they're putting out, it might be a more cohesive experience for people.
I'm not sure if that's really a positive or a negative yet. I guess we'll find out as VR becomes less of a peripheral and more of a standard, or will it ever? Is it a gimmick? Let us know what you think below, and if Sony will actually come up ahead with their new Project Morpheus.